It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host.
Good to have you on the podcast, like we'll each Omobola Stephen on the show. We focus on personal development and self-improvement topics. We highlight personal development topics, especially that is covering relationships, family. We also talk about spirituality, the business side of life, and also self-improvement. We emphasize the need for us to focus on personally developing ourselves and also improving ourselves in such a way that when we intentionally do this, we find ourselves along the way. And when we find ourselves, there's so much joy and sense of fulfillment in realizing who we are and what life truly has for us in its offering if we don't give up. Now, all of the tremendous changes and transformations that you and I desire in this life can only come when we intentionally focus on ourselves, looking inwards and asking the needed questions that needed to be asked. Because when the questions are asked, I guarantee you the answers will always show up. And so it's important for you and I to begin to consider looking inwards and asking the right questions. And it's so much that the universe is always willing to offer the right answers in order for us to begin to experience the changes that we need. Now, the focus and the mission of the podcast is for us to pivot transformative insight that is going to move you from where you are to where you need to be with professionals who are adepts in these topics, who've been there and done that as regards to personal development and self-improvement topics. On today's show, I have Bryan H. Shepard, who is an author at Eagle Vision Entertainment Corporation, and he will be talking much more about his book, the new book that he just launched, Eagle Spirit for Sovereignty. Welcome with me on the show, Bryan H. Shephard.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Great to have you on the show and looking forward to a great time as we explore all of the takeaways, important takeaways about your book. We'll be focused on spirituality nonetheless and looking forward to a great time indeed. So in a highly competitive and mercurial industry that you are in, you are in an entertainment industry, you were able to reach the pinnacle of success in your career with a visual disability. So how did this shift happen?
You're saying how did the shift happen? How did the success happen out of that? Um, well, I mean, if you, I think it's important to understand where I came from. I came from a very small town in the East Coast of the United States, and um, to really pursue a career in the entertainment industry, I had to make a shift. I had to go all the way into Hollywood. And I had to go from a culture that was, maybe 20, 30 years behind the time to Hollywood. And that's a big change just in itself, just to go from that, rural town to a big city. Very challenging to just pack up everything and go. I mean, I had some success in a college where I trained in film and television, but I'd never really been to a city. I think when I went to college, it was the first time I'd met a Jewish person, and that was a classmate of mine. And so to go from a very small town of 5 or 6 thousand people um, at the time when I grew up to a city of millions in Los Angeles, it's very challenging. And so it took a lot of courage. And um, and uh, when coronavirus hit, I really gave me a chance to sort of reflect on what I've done and what I've achieved and why I've achieved it. And so then I took up to writing a book, and there was born Eagle Spirit for Sovereignty. Um, so I think it's important to understand the background, and how that success comes, um, is really a product of your upbringing. It's a product of your culture, your parenting, and what you've learned along the way. So I thought that it was important to share those lessons with people, which is why I ended up writing the book.
All right. How did you retain your centeredness, your peace, and your connections to your own spiritual nature in the light of all of the external factors that are pushing you in unexpected directions? You and I know how demanding this industry can become.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that is a great question because I think it's important to I think it's important to sort of honor where it is that you've come from, and I think that how I was able to maintain my sense of spirituality and maintain my integrity was because of where I had grown up and where I'd come from. And I think culture is very important. And you sort of bring that along with you. Indigenous cultures would share stories. They handed stories down, and so your story is really important to maintaining your culture and your integrity. And I think that like I said, good parenting, um, you know, having a great culture, the indigenous culture where I was growing up was really important to sort of maintaining what's important in life. And so, you bring that with you, and where you travel. So when I came to Hollywood, and you do see a lot of interesting things. You do, you're confronted with a lot of challenges and people that try to spin you out of where you of your spiritual center, if you will. And it's important to maintain that. So I think a deep connection with who you are spiritually needs to be developed so that you don't get spun out of control. And that's why I think sovereignty is such an important issue and was one that I write about in the book. That's why the book is titled Eagle Spirit for Sovereignty, because sovereignty is something that you need to give yourself. It's not something that you need to be granted by some kind of nation state. Spiritual sovereignty is important to develop within.
All right, I wanted to ask this question. Aside the rich educational background that you had and also a great parenting, which helped you a lot, do you think that education was also an important factor?
Oh, absolutely. And I think higher education is certainly very critical. I think it was super important in playing that role. Um, uh, I think you know that's where you develop a lot of these critical skills. But you, you know and I guess, when you really look back at some indigenous cultures and you understand that they spent a lot of time with their elders, they spent a lot of time being educated by those who had been there before, people who had seen the world in such a fashion that they could explain what you were experiencing and the trials and tribulations that you might encounter. Um, that's the super important nature of higher learning, higher education, and actually being put in front of the people who have been there before, who can tell you what you're going to encounter. Um, and I think it's super important. It's super important to extend your education. I mean, to this day, I try to learn something new each day. I try to explore things that I haven't learned about before. Um, I think it's super important. Yes, absolutely.
All right. When you propose that animals and nature, they can help lead us to a more successful, brighter, and fulfilling life. Do you have any experience to bring up this point?
Absolutely. I mean, I grew up at a time when the North American bald eagle was an endangered species. Back in the 70s, they had discovered that pesticides were getting into the food supply, and these birds were in roundabout way through what they ate, were ingesting this pesticide, and it was discovered that the shells of the bald eagle were too thin to really undergo the pressure of incubation And so the population of the bald eagle was starting to decline as well as other populations of birds like peregrine falcons and so forth and so on. This was a big thing back in the 70s. We're having this interview on Earth Day, which is really super important to us in the natural world. We celebrate the Earth, but back then in the 70s when Earth Day was launched, this was a main topic of their targeting, society and saying, "Hey, look, we've got to be better stewards of nature." And so I grew up at that time when we're trying to save a species, and so I learned quickly as a young child that perseverance. I learned that specifically from the bald eagle, and the animals around me. I was, like I said, I was very fortunate to grow up in a place where nature was prevalent. There were waterways, there were birds, there were deer, there were all kinds of animals, raccoons, squirrels, you name it, and that was largely important for my growth and my spiritual growth, because I was able to see that there were other spiritual beings around me. I mean, these are all living creatures that are possessed with an amazing spirit. And the eagle in indigenous culture was the original spirit bird, and it flew highest to the creator, so it was able to share our prayers with the creator of all things. And so I quickly learned about perseverance from the bald eagle, because it needed to persevere in order to survive, and that did come with some legislation where where pesticides were targeted, and we learned from that. And so that there was the jumping off point when I was a young child of what animals could teach us about ourselves, and understanding who we are in the world.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that perspective with the audience. So what do you think, or what importance do you place in learning from the natural world?
Can you rephrase that question? What importance did you say that I...
Yes. What importance is learning from the natural world? What does it mean to a person?
Well, I think if you look at the natural world, you understand how we fit in. It's interesting. It's one of the things that I've shared on other podcasts and talks that I've done along the way, is that nature is not an obstacle. It's not something that gets in the way of you driving to work. I mean, nature really is the way. It's the way that we've learned about ourselves over time and millennium. I mean, it's important to understand how we fit in. Indigenous cultures, and they practiced animism, obviously. They knew spirit was in all things, and life and they say it so well, is this sacred hoop, that we're all on a sacred hoop. Nothing is more important, and nothing is of lesser importance standing on that hoop. So it doesn't matter if it's a human being, it doesn't matter if it's a deer or an eagle. Those things all have a place on the hoop, and all interconnected, and we're all equally as important. And so I think that is probably the greatest lesson that nature teaches us, is that we need to value all things in this ecosystem, in this biosphere. We do not survive if there are no insects. If we continue to destroy the insects on this planet at an alarming rate, human existence is in peril. And so we need to understand how we fit in, and how we can be stewards of this land, and how we can support one another. We're not just here to support each other as human beings. We're here to support the ecosystem and the biosphere.
But really, in terms of enriching the ecosystem, do you think the actors, especially the governments, do you think they're doing justice in this regard?
Do I feel that the government is doing its job? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
I think somewhat. I think somewhat. But, do we really need to be legislated into doing the right thing? Let me ask you a question. If there's in the image behind me, there's one tree that stood in a fire in 2007, and you can see it. You can see it over this shoulder right here. You can see that tree. There's a tree up there that survived that fire, and it was the only one. And people now hike to it, and it's called the wisdom tree. And I really ask people this question: when you hike to this tree, will you be the one to carry an axe, or will you carry a bottle of water for that tree? You can do either one. You can cut that tree down, or you can water it so that it survives. And we need to ask ourselves, do we need to be legislated into doing the right thing? Um, I think the right thing comes from within. And if you can connect with who you are spiritually, which is why this book is important, is finding out who you are spiritually. When you do the hike to that tree, you won't carry a hatchet. You'll carry a bottle of water. And so, do I think governments are doing the right thing? I think governments are trying to serve the people as much as they can. I think they get a lot of pressure. I think that we need to develop our sense of spirituality so that we do the right thing. And there's been some great legislation. There's been the Clean Water Acts. There's been all these kind of EPA agencies and things like that, and those are all great. And when you look at the history behind those things and you understand why they're necessary, that's all terrific. But these are protections from one thing, and that's human beings. These are all protections that are given to, maybe species, or they maybe counties, or whatever you want to consider, but it's all protection from human beings. Who are we? Are we the humans that want to walk and dominate everything and control everything? Or are we the human beings that want to cultivate and nurture and care for this wonderful environment? I think that, governments are here to serve the people. And the people are the ones who need to stand up and say, wait a second, we want more trees in our community. We want more of nature. We want more singing birds. So I think that question needs to come from you. Who are you, and what do you want? And then you'll demand that from your government.
All right. In this regard, do you think shaping our mindset, how do you think it is equally important to better navigate the challenges that comes our way?
Shifting the mindset, well, I mean, it really comes from where your mindset is right now. I love the things that you're doing. I love the things that I'm seeing out there where people are trying to change and make a difference. I think that's important. Um, I come back to sovereignty, because this is, and what I coined in the book is that sovereignty is a spiritual thing. It's something that should come from within. And I think that the changes that we really would like to see in the world really stem from us doing the work internally. Each one of us bringing something to the table of who we are. And I think that that's developed through spiritual sovereignty. Um, I start the book by talking about somebody who might be dear to you, and that's Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela, as some of your listeners may or may not know, was an important historical figure in South Africa, and he was in prison simply because he was black, and he spent 20, maybe 26 years in a prison cell that was the size of a 7 by 8 room, and you would think that that would break a human being. You would think that that would change the way a person functioned in the world. But Nelson Mandela, was in a twist of fate, um, democratically elected to be president of the people that would imprison him. And what did he do? Uh, he engaged in peacefulness. He didn't go annihilate the people that tried to kill him and put him in prison for 26 years, where he slept on a mat. He didn't even sleep on a bed. Um, and that's spiritual sovereignty at its greatest. That's somebody who said, I'm not going to let the world change who I am. I am going to continue to be a peaceful person. And so he walked he walked the walk, he talked the talk, and he didn't let outside circumstances change who he was. And I think that when we engage in this sense of spiritual sovereignty, we will understand who we are, and from that, we will create a more peaceful and productive and greater world.
Bryan, you've been emphasizing on the spiritual sovereignty in all of your discussions. What
Yes.
really is spiritual sovereignty? I'd like you to share this with my audience. What truly is spiritual sovereignty? In the light of your new book,
Yes.
Eagle Spirits for Sovereignty, Wisdom of the Great Masters and Natural World on Freedom, Power, and Self-Preservation.
Yeah, I think that people, this word sovereignty is a little puzzling to people. They feel that sovereignty is something that's delegated to them. They feel that sovereignty is something that's granted by a government, a nation state. Um, but as as I just explained, Nelson Mandela had his quote unquote sovereignty taken away, if you will. He was imprisoned, and at any point, you or I, Bolo, we could be in traumatic circumstances. We could be wrongly accused of something. We could be imprisoned. We could be taken away. We could be living in a country right now that doesn't honor freedom. And roughly, it's safe to say that close to 3 billion people live under governments that don't honor personal freedom. So sovereignty is this thing that it's this word that people have come up with, that it's like, well, okay, well, I live in a sovereign nation. Well, maybe you do, but maybe you don't. Even if you live in the United States, you could be thrown in prison. You could be wrongly accused of a crime. So what is sovereignty if it's and so I explored this topic, and I'm wondering, what the heck? I mean, I was fortunate. I grew up at a time when being white and being male was relatively an okay thing. And so maybe my time wasn't as rough to get to where I was. But I did grow up in a town that had lots of racism, and I grew up at a time when I understood that black people were persecuted just for being black. And so sovereignty, what the heck is it? Is it a nation? Is it granted by nation states? Well, no, it can be taken away at any point for you or I or anybody else on the planet. So realistically, what sovereignty is, it's something that you give yourself. It's something that comes from within. And like I said with Nelson Mandela, if 26 years in prison doesn't change a man and create some sort of, animosity, anger, outrage, what would? So what I understood quickly was sovereignty is something that comes from within. It's spiritual, and as everything is, when you break everything down, it comes down to a spiritual question. Um, you know, it's it's one of those topics that I felt that was really, really important to explore. And so that's why I talk about in this book from the beginning is that we need to develop who we are spiritually. And that is true sovereignty. That is being able to give yourself freedom, self-preservation. Um, it's able to give yourself forgiveness, and all of the things that come along with being spiritually sovereign. It's a way of giving yourself ultimate freedom and self-preservation, and um, and so yeah, that's what I focused on the book, and that's why I feel that communicating this to other people is important, because I think we need to understand who we are internally, and then from there outward, we can be the change that we want to see in the world. We can participate in the things that are productive, and we can excel to, I think, the highest points of our chosen professions and where it is that we want to be.
Right. Brian, do you have any important information, perhaps any projects in the pipeline you think it's going to benefit or add value to the audience? You can share that if you have any.
Yes, I mean, I think that in the future, and we talked a little bit about this before, is that I feel that there will be a podcast and perhaps a YouTube channel in the future. I've started to work with some other amazing people in my community. I'm working on a reciprocity project that actually repurposes Los Angeles-based timber for the people who were affected in the affected areas of the burned areas in Altadena and the Palisades. So we're trying to actually repurpose the trees that are coming out of these communities and putting them back into the communities in terms of structural timber. So I'm working with those folks on that project. And I'm really hoping to launch a podcast that will really focus more on the spiritual side of life, and how we can better improve ourselves to better improve the communities that we live in, and also cherish Mother Earth.
Good to know. Thanks for sharing that information with the
Sure.
audience, Brian. We like to connect more, learn more about you and what you've been up to lately. If you don't mind, you can share your website and your social media handles.
Yes, well, because I write about sovereignty, and because I this is one of the things that it's very difficult to express to people. But y- when you engage in sovereignty, it's important for me to preserve who I am. So I'm limited in my social media. I feel that if you want to reach out to me, I can be reached at Bryan at Eagle Vision LA. Or you could actually probably better to just use my Gmail, eaglevisionla@gmail.com. Just reach out to me directly, and you can learn more about me there. I can share what I'm engaged in, but I'm limited in terms of social media because I don't get into those things too much.
Good to know. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
Really appreciate your time, sincerely, Brian, on behalf of the audience of the podcast Library from Omobola Stephen. We sincerely wish you best of luck, especially your new book, Eagle Spirit for Sovereignty, and all the projects that you aspire to have in the nearest future. All of the best.
sure.
We wish
Thank
you
you.
indeed. Yes.
Thank you. And I'll
The
share with
Library
the audience.
from
I'll
Omobola
share
Stephen.
I'll share with the audience that you can see the book and get the book on Amazon. It's Eagle Spirit for Sovereignty by Bryan H. Shephard, and it's available on Amazon if you want to pick it up. And like you said, you can reach me at uh, at my email if you'd like.
Absolutely. I think the audience will be looking forward to having the information on the show notes. We're going to include that.
Oh,
soon.
terrific. Yeah.
Sure. So if you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of the podcast, you can do so on any cross-promotion platforms or any podcast distribution platforms online. Do have a great time listening to professionals who've been there and done that. In terms
Yes.
of offering disruptive yet constructive mindshift insight on topics that are related to personal development and self-improvement. Till I come your way, I always need you to stay safe. My name is Omobola Stephen. Thanks for joining me on the show. And thank you once again, Bryan H. Shepard. We really had a great time.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.